Hey there guys, and thanks so much for clicking on this video and joining me in this episode of Review Flicks. I always appreciate you guys being here. So we're going to be talking about one of my most favourite franchises in the entire universe, Sonic the Hedgehog. With each film coming out doing better and better at the box office, it is now official, by the way, that Sonic 3 is the best grossing movie in the trilogy. So that box office trajectory has continued to grow with each movie, which is great. We know Sonic 4 has now been greenlit as well, but it looks like in the last sort of 48 hours, we've had some brand new concept art from deleted scenes of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which have now been released to the public, and it potentially shows us what they cut from the movie and what may potentially be carrying over to Sonic 4 as part of the narrative or plot going forward in Sonic 4. So this is very, very interesting concept art. So let's break it down, this information, check out the concept art, and see what potentially could be in store for us when we get round to the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 4. So this comes to us from comicbookmovie.com, and this goes without saying, guys, I'm going to be talking about spoilers for Sonic the Hedgehog 3. If you haven't seen the movie by this point, you're obviously not interested in seeing it, but I just thought, as a film fan, I want to be respectful and just say, guys, we are going to be talking about spoilers for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, so you have been warned. So let's get into this article here. So Sonic the Hedgehog 3 concept art reveals deleted scenes and what's next after the post-credit scene. Obviously, again, spoilers. So let's get into this information. Then, like I said, we're going to go over to X and we're going to check out those brand new released concept art images and see what we can potentially learn about what's going on with the franchise here. So Sonic the Hedgehog 3 has been widely held as the best installment in the trilogy. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. That movie was fantastic. The after credit scene, apart from the Avengers movies, when it comes to Marvel, the end credit scene that we got for Sonic the Hedgehog 3, one of the best and biggest and most positive pops I've had at the cinema in a long time from the after credit scene of Sonic the Hedgehog 3. It was incredible. Though some newly revealed concept art hints at the movie that's arguably even grander in scale than the fans watched in theaters last month. There are lots of sequences showcased here that either weren't in the final cut or were changed significantly. Obviously, that always happens. From going from concept art to on-screen actual cinematography and what they're shooting, it's going to be vastly different. They're going to pick up new shots. They're going to disregard certain concept arts. So yeah, a lot of things are going to change, obviously for like budget reasons, for time constraints, all that kind of stuff. So why? It likely comes down to practical reasons like the movie's budget, like I was just saying. However, by far the biggest talking point is what appears to be a glimpse of an alternate timeline with Eggman ruling over Earth alongside Metal Sonic. Yeah, that one piece of concept art is probably the most interesting of the bunch, but we'll get to it in just a minute. So in Sonic the Hedgehog 3's post-credit scene, we were introduced to Amy Rose, and the chances are that we'll get to visit a version of that twisted future in an already confirmed fourth installment. We're not exactly shocked that Dr. Robotnik will likely live to fight another day after his apparent demise. I've already talked about this in a video that I did a couple of weeks back now. You know, can these movies survive without having Jim Carrey's Dr. Robotnik in them? Is he too big a part of the franchise to not have him there? So if he turned around and said that he didn't want to come back to the franchise, would the Sonic movies continuing on without Jim Carrey's Dr. Robotnik, would they still be as successful? Would they still work? Is he too big a slice of the pie for the movies to continue without him if he chose not to come back? That's another interesting conversation for another day, but just something to bear in mind there, guys. So, what's shown here may well be carried over to part 4, though it's still very early days for the movie, which is currently eyeing a spring 2027 debut. Yeah, they greenlit Sonic 4 mega quickly. They got onto it. They got onto the hype. You know, the fan hype for these movies is getting bigger and bigger every time the movie comes out. So they greenlit it pretty much instantaneously after Sonic 3 came out. They saw the reception and they jumped on it straight away, which was great. So what we're going to do now, we're going to hop over to X and let's check out these concept art pictures. I tell you what, the artists who make these pictures, they are so incredibly talented. And it shows in their work, the passion, the commitment, the enthusiasm, and Sonic has never looked better. So this comes to us from Sonic and All Characters, Sonic the Hedgehog 3 movie concept art thread, published by Tactic Sign Studio. Some include scenes that were significantly altered or removed completely. So let's start getting into these images here. So we have this one here of Golden Sonic and Golden Shadow fighting each other in space, and we have that gigantic space station laser in the background firing its beam at Earth and destroying the Earth in the background. I believe in the movie that the beam didn't actually destroy Earth, as far as I know. It like missed and hit the moon, didn't it? I think. From what I remember, I may be remembering that wrong, so I do apologize if I am, but I don't remember it hitting the Earth. Correct me if I am wrong, like I said, but awesome seeing these two Super Saiyan hedgehogs fighting each other. So moving on to the next one, we have Maria and Shadow. Obviously, this was featured in the movie, that flashback scene where Shadow is in the cryotube, and obviously Maria is kind of putting her hand on the tube. We saw that in the movie. Moving on to this. So this is what I was talking about. This is probably one of the most interesting concept art reveals that they've put out here. So we have Eggman in the middle. He looks like he's in some sort of like royal robes. He's almost like a king or some sort of like royalty to some degree. He's in like a palace here. You can see in the background, everything's kind of red and ominous, and the buildings are very kind of like cyberpunkish almost looking in the background here. We have these statues in the foreground. We have these kind of cherubs you know, playing the instruments in the background. He's on this kind of grand stage, and obviously it goes without saying, Metal Sonic is stood by the side of him, looking kind of intense. Looks like that's his bodyguard, and this was obviously cut from the movie, but this could be carrying over to Sonic 4. So it could give us a hint as to what's going on in the future. Dr. Robotnik could be the ruler of Earth, or it could be an alternate timeline where he's a ruler of the Earth. Metal Sonic is kind of his bodyguard. But this artwork, very, very interesting indeed. And if this was going to be in Sonic 3, it would have been very interesting to see how this fitted into the story and exactly where the narrative would have gone with it. So moving on to the next one. Obviously, this is from the end of the movie, the after credit scene, when Amy Rose appears in the after credits. It looks like we have one of Eggman's kind of sentinels, like robots, and it looks like Amy Rose has kind of protected Sonic, taken down the sentinel, and she stood there with a big hammer over her shoulders. I can see that her hair looks a little bit different here. I think it looks kind of cool. Again, fantastic design with Amy Rose. A lot of people speculated for a very long time that she was going to appear in this movie, whether it was going to be after credits or, you know, within the actual movie itself. But the after credit scene where she shows up, absolutely huge pop in the cinema. People just went crazy. They lost their minds. And one of the best cinematic going experiences I've had in a long time. And I think she's going to be great in the 4th installment. So let's move on to the next bunch of images here. So we have a few more to go through. So in this one here, we have Knuckles and Tails on a scooter. And they're making their way through London. You can see the London Underground sign there. And we've got this gigantic ball of kind of earth that's kind of been like sucked together. Almost like a gravity ball, where like everything has been sucked in, or like a black hole potentially. And you can just see everything's in the shape of a ball, and it's kind of chasing them down the street, and they're driving on the scooter trying to get away from it. Almost a little bit of a play on the Indiana Jones, with the big stone ball kind of chasing Indiana Jones. And yeah, I mean, pretty damn cool stuff. So moving on to the next one. We have Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles here. It looks like they're making their way through some sort of big hole in the ground. Tails is doing his best to try and fly while carrying both of these characters. And it looks like there's a load of scorpions on Knuckles' head there. And I don't believe this was in the movie from what I can remember. I did see this movie almost a month ago now, I believe. And yeah, so if I am forgetting this scene, I do apologize. But I don't remember seeing this in the movie. Pretty cool. So let's move on to the next one. And then we have, obviously, Gerald Robotnik and Dr. Robotnik kind of having that fight scene at the end on the kind of the space station, the laser space station. Looks like there's flames. Everything's blowing up. The space laser is again hitting the Earth. And they're kind of having their showdown at the end of the movie, which is pretty cool. So, we have a few more images here to go through, guys. So, again, Gerald Robotnik, Dr. Robotnik kind of standing side by side. It looks like they're at some sort of facility in London where they're trying to get the launch codes. They're trying to get that key to launch the space station, or whatever it was, to activate the space station, I think it was. And it looks like they're kind of, you know, everything's blowing up and catching fire. And it looks like here he's got some sort of invisibility shield protecting him from gunfire, which is kind of cool. So, moving on to the next one, we have Maria and Shadow sat on the moon looking over the Earth. which is, again, a pretty beautiful image. Again, love the artwork here, done a fantastic job. I'm going to be using some of these as wallpapers on my computer, I think, because they're so nice to look at. But yeah, this wasn't in the movie, I don't think. They were sat kind of like on the grass outside the kind of, you know, the Black Ops facility where Shadow was being housed. And they were sat outside and they were looking up at the moon or looking up at the sun or something. But I don't think they were sat on the moon at any point during the movie, from what I remember. And then moving on to this, we have the Chow Garden, and we have Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles sat there with their funny little Chow hats on. We have the General here as well, and we have the Chow kind of mascots in the background. I love that scene in the movie where Knuckles turns to Tails and says, "Yeah, you do look like Pikachu." Kind of funny. And then we have this one as well. This is probably one of my most favorite images. We have, obviously, Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails sat around the campfire with James Marsden and Tika Sumpter, and the dog as well in there roasting marshmallows. But if you look at Knuckles here, he's got grapes. He's trying to roast grapes. I'm not sure why. And I like the fact that Sonic's got a hot dog, and he's just put a hot dog on a stick. So that's kind of funny. Okay, and then we have our last few images here, guys. So, we have this one here, that black hole scene, where they confront Shadow and Dr. Robotnik, and Shadow kind of unleashes the black hole, where they're tied up, the three characters, Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails. And Knuckles is holding onto the wire by his teeth. Obviously, this scene was in the movie, so that's pretty cool. Moving on to this one, we have Dr. Robotnik. Instead of him being in the space station... no, he wasn't in the space station, was he? He was in... What was he? In the crab? In, like, the crab robot thing? I can't remember exactly where he was when they first encountered him. But they see Dr. Robotnik. He's let himself go. He's put on a lot of weight. He's got, like, there's a big mess where all the food that he's been eating. And the characters come across him. This wasn't in the movie. They changed the location. I don't remember exactly where the scene took place. I think it was inside a big robot crab thing where they first encounter him in the movie. But yeah, when he's let himself go and there's food everywhere, and yeah, pretty funny scene. Then we have the scene again with the two kind of Super Saiyan hedgehogs in space when they have the fight scene. And it looks like here, is the space station blowing up, or is this some sort of time portal that's opened? I'm not exactly 100% sure what's going on here. Yeah, I think this is the space station blowing up, I think. I'm not exactly sure again. Do let me know in the comment section if you know exactly what's going on here. I'm not exactly sure. But still, a pretty cool scene. Then we have Dr. Robotnik and Sonic tied up, and Gerald Robotnik and Shadow standing there. So it looks like, obviously, you know, Gerald Robotnik turns on his grandson and has tied up Sonic and Dr. Robotnik there, which is quite cool. I don't think this scene was in the movie either. But yeah, that's some of the artwork there that's been released, guys, which is really, really interesting. Again, I go back to this one, which could have the biggest ramifications. An alternate, possibly alternate timeline with Dr. Robotnik in these kind of royal garbs, royal outfit, with Metal Sonic as his bodyguard, and then this kind of dystopian background. That could potentially what we might be seeing in Sonic 4, whether it's an alternate timeline or potentially something happens in Sonic 4 which now allows Dr. Robotnik to take over the world and turn it into this kind of dystopian kind of nightmare. We just don't know at this moment, but like I say, that has the biggest indication as to what we could be seeing in the future, which is very, very interesting. So going back over to the article, let's quickly read this quote here, and then we'll finish off the video. So, talking to Screen Rant, filmmaker Jeff Fowler, obviously the director, teases the ramifications of the Stinger, which also features the franchise's title character coming face to face with Metal Sonic. So he says, I mean, usually the way these post-credit teasers work is we're so jamming on finishing the film, but at the same time, you don't want to just throw characters in there and not know what you're going to do with them. So there's certainly, as we're winding down on Sonic 3, as we were prepping for the post-credit teaser, we absolutely we have had a lot of really great creative discussions and got excited by some ideas. Because you don't want to paint yourself into a corner and put a character in there and then not know what you're doing, not knowing what you're going to do with them. But it's all very preliminary, and much more work needing to come in order to really get the process going. So that's great. So he's basically saying they put Amy Rose in the post-credit scene. They didn't want to just jam a character in there for the sake of it without knowing kind of where they were going in the future, knowing that they're potentially painting themselves to a corner by putting Amy Rose there and then not being able to have her in the 4th installment, or not knowing what to do with her in the future. So the only reason she's there is because they have a plan for her in the future and they know what they want to do with her, which absolutely makes sense from a filmmaking perspective. So, that's pretty much where we are, guys. So that's all the interesting concept art there. I mean, which image stood out to you the most? What do you take away from these images? Do you think that we could potentially see some of these plot lines, deleted plot lines, potentially from Sonic 3 showing up in Sonic 4? And, or do you think they're just deleted concept art that will have no ramifications in the future of the franchise? Either way, as a fan, it's fun to have that kind of discussion of the potential future of the franchise here. So guys, jump into the comment section, let me know. Like I said, what stands out to you? What do you take away from these concept art? And yeah, I think they're really compelling and really cool, and potential insight into Sonic 4. So guys, thanks so much for being here. Make sure you hit that like and become a subscriber of the channel if you haven't already. It goes a long way to supporting the content, so I'd really, really appreciate that. And as always, I will see you in the next video.